Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Heaven knows I have had bad days as a trial lawyer. I've had days when I got up and I couldn't ask a question that wasn't a leading question. And I would draw objection after objection, and the judge would get frustrated at me. And you have those kinds of days, particularly when you're new at doing this, and it's like somebody sucking all the confidence in the world right out of you. And objections can be very difficult to deal with because you know what you're trying to ask, but you just can't do it. You can't get the words out. You can't form the sentences that you need to form. And so you're ready to pull your hair out. And of course, I lost quite a bit that way. And so I understand what it's like to have a bad day. Okay. I get that. Initially, when I first started looking at this young thug trial, I thought the prosecution was just having a bad case of nerves. The first day or so of trial can be really nerve-wracking. You rarely get a lot of good sleep the night before, and on the night that you have done the opening, you go home and you keep hearing all of the objections that were made and the rebukes that you received and all of that. And you get awakened in the middle of the night with the darned objections that you heard during the day. It can be pretty trying the first couple of days of trial. But I am less convinced that this is now the case. I think it's day 6 and the prosecution should be in full swing, but instead they keep swinging and missing. For one thing, they keep calling witnesses, getting in a lot of foundational testimony, and then after they get their primary evidence in, a defense attorney gets up and just destroys it. Several defense attorneys have done that in this case today. So in this first clip here, we have a canine officer. Suffice it to say, he didn't come from Central Casting.
3 years, and then my last 5 years, I was assigned to canine.
Okay, and what you do as a canine officer?
We respond to any type of canine calls, whether it's narcotics related, whether it's a missing person to track for a missing child or something like that. Self-initiated calls, just out.
I think is sort of the majority of his testimony here. Obviously, he didn't think to prepare for this testimony, and he's just stumbling his way through it.
Driving in the higher crime areas, we also were tasked out to assist the DEA, ATF, outside agencies with calls when they didn't have a canine available.
Okay, and you're talking about him. You have a partner who's in the canine.
Yes.
And who's your partner?
Chacon.
And Chacon dog.
Yes.
Okay. And
he thinks he's a person, but he's a dog. Yes, Chakon.
And does Chacon have to go through any training in order to assist you and serve as a canine?
Yes.
The canine. What type of training does Chacon have?
So initially, you go through the process of picking out a canine that would best work for what we need. So it would have been tracking narcotics and article, which is like evidence recovery, anything with human odor on it they can find. But I went directly to that call to assist Officer Ross.
Okay. And as we just discussed earlier, you said that it was Chacon, your dog that was missing.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so now he's talking about the one call that he's involved in this case, and it's a canine call, and it involves apparently finding some drugs. So that's sort of the backstory. I've shortened this up quite a bit so that we could do a video without 15,000 ums in it.
And was he certified during that time?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Let's show Chacon.
You may.
Now she's going to show him.
75 and 76I.
Now he's going to show his certifications of the dog.
I do.
And how do you recognize 75?
These are Chacon's certifications each year through the NNDDA. Once he got to the Chevy Sonic, I noticed that his his breathing calmed down, he slowed down, his tail starts wagging. When Chacon begins to get an odor, he gets excited, his tail starts wagging, and then you can physically hear him taking in a deep breath through his nose. And then at that point, he begins to bite at the door handle and the driver's side door handle and seam area, which is his natural alert, not taught alert. That's just something he does when he gets in on a trained odor, and then he begins to scratch at the area where he smells the odor coming from.
Now, at this point, he has laid the foundation. He's talked about the search. He's talked about how the dog alerts, what he does, and he scratches, and how he says, yeah, you know, that's got some human odor or some drug odor in it. And this is that, and the certifications that he testified to are all designed to convince the jury this dog knows what he is doing. Man, when he smells dope, man, he's on it like white on rice. And then we get a defense attorney who comes in and unwraps that testimony basically with just a couple of questions. Let's watch.
I just have one question. I didn't ask you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. You indicated that you walked Chacon around the area generally, correct? Mm-hmm. Chacon didn't hit on a blunt that was on the ground near a white car, did it?
No, he did not.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Anybody else?
So much for the drug dog being infallible, right? There is an element that you deal with drug dogs, and all of the defense attorneys who do criminal work know this, that the handler can, in some instances, sort of direct the dog to hit on things and to do things that he might not otherwise do if he was strictly following his training, because dogs are people pleasers. They want to please the person that gives them the most attention, and that's always going to be the canine officer. So, you know, there is a potential for drug dogs to not exactly be great science. Courts still allow it, but the bottom line is that every now and again you'll have a search that just doesn't quite measure up, or a drug dog will hit on something and there won't be anything found. And here we have the exact opposite. We've got marijuana, a blunt laying on the sidewalk that any drug dog trained in drug detection would have hit on, and he walked around the parking lot, but he didn't hit on that. So with just a couple of questions, the defense attorney has completely eviscerated the testimony of this particular patrol officer here. Now we have another treat in the GBI officer, the person who was with the GBI who tested the drugs that the police officers apparently found. Now, the GBI, in case you don't know, is the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. It is the state analog of the FBI. They have their own crime lab. And as the piece I did several months ago indicated, you know, not all drug labs and not all crime labs are necessarily 100% scientific. And what you have here is somebody who worked in the crime lab, and he's testifying about drugs that he tested, you know, many months ago. So let's listen as we get some foundational testimony from him.
And what did you do for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
I was a forensic examiner that analyzed evidence for the presence or absence of controlled substances.
And tell us a little bit about your training education.
I went to Georgia Southern University, where I received my bachelor's degree in chemistry. This was one of the main requirements needed to get hired by the Bureau. Once I was hired at the Bureau, I went through their training program where I was introduced to a variety of different substances that I might see, how to analyze those substances, and how to use the many different analytical techniques that were provided.
Okay, so now he's going to testify about a couple of bags of material that he was asked to test. But pay careful attention to his testimony here.
They do seem somewhat familiar.
Okay.
Somewhat?
Well, as I don't have my notes for me from the GBI and the photos that were taken, it's hard for me to do a comparison to what I see here versus what I saw at the time I opened this. However, there are some things in here that are familiar. This is a very standard evidence bag that we received from the Atlanta Police Department. It does have the case number. When I flip it over, I see the items inside that match the description that I put on the report. And at the bottom of this one particular bag, I can see my initials I made when I sealed up the evidence after I made entry into the bag.
Now, when you were asked to test those items, what items did you receive?
I received a bag of tablets. There were two different logo imprints on.
She draws an objection.
So is your objection to foundation? All right, I'll sustain this to that.
Because at the time, the weight, the 31, was over the 28 that was in the GBI protocol, and that the particular compound that I identified justified that the...
Now, what he's doing right now is he's testifying to why he didn't test the other stuff. He didn't test the tablets. The only thing he tested was the thing that weighed the most, which in this case was a bag of material. And he's about to explain why that is.
Exhibits did not need to be tested.
Now, as it relates to the other items that were given to the GBI to be tested, while you did not test them, did you identify in any way what the tablets could be?
Now you're going to get some objections.
I'll sustain this to form. You can rephrase, madam.
Did you identify those tablets?
No, I did not.
Obtain them into evidence?
So with the two different tablets that actually had a logo imprint, I was able to just do a quick Google search for what they could potentially be. And
I'll rule the objection.
what they could potentially be. Now granted, this is not identification, this is just an indication, but there was an...
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
It's not identification, it's speculation.
Overruled. And I'll note your objection, madam.
At best, I was able to just at least indicate that it might...
Your Honor, I'm going to object. It's not in his report.
I'll overrule the objection.
It was an indication that it might be appraisal line, but I never did any chemical testing to verify that at all.
Now that's pretty interesting. He never did any testing to verify whether or not there was midprazolone or asprasolone, something like that, in this particular bag. And we'll find out a little bit more here in just a second. Now the prosecutor is going to get him to tell him what the federal drug schedule is. There are a schedule of narcotics which are dangerous drugs and which are controlled more closely. Schedule 1, Schedule 2, Schedule 3. So she's going to try to get him to testify as to what schedule this drug is. So let's watch what happens and let's see how the judge reacts.
And in this case, let me ask you, bath salts, what schedule were bath salts?
To my best understanding of the law, it's a Schedule 1 substance.
Is that what you put on the report?
Yes, it is.
I'll strike the issue of his understanding of the law. If you can ask him a question in regards to that, but I'll instruct the jury on what the law is.
What did you know the bath salts to be in this case? What level, what schedule did you schedule?
Per GBI protocol, I was required to list Schedule 1 on the report.
And
Cop saved her there.
are you aware of what MDMA, what schedule MDMA is? Are you aware?
Again, just to my best interpretation of the Georgia Code, it's
Oops.
a Schedule 1.
Big mistake.
So both MDMA and bath salts are both schedule 1, okay?
Again, to my best interpretation of the law.
I sustain the objection. Ladies and gentlemen, disregard the witness's last statements about Schedule 1. If it's applicable, I will charge you as to that.
You know, we're not asking for an interpretation, but
Objection.
Don't speak your objection, madam. If you have another way of phrasing this, please go ahead and do so. But he cannot testify about what the law is, okay?
But again, based on your report, that's what you noted, that the item that you suspect, the bath salts.
Objection, ask and answer.
I sustain the objection.
I have no further questions.
Anything further?
Your Honor, just
Unbelievable. She just completely shut down. She couldn't figure out how to answer it. But it's happened to me, so I understand it.
Sir, At the end of the day, what you tested was not MDMA, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And you did not test the pills, correct?
That is correct.
You cannot tell this jury with certainty what was in anything you received beside what you tested,
That is correct.
which was just bath salts.
Yes, ma'am.
Have a nice day. No further questions.
All right. And
And there you have it. A couple of questions. The defense attorney gets up and just wipes away all of the evidence that this guy put in by basically getting him to admit, yeah, I don't know what the rest of that stuff was. And yeah, it could have been anything, but it wasn't what, I didn't test it, so I don't know. And the stuff that I did test was bath salts. That's pretty, when you think about it, you really have to wonder what it was they were trying to get across with these particular witnesses. Now, this next witness, I wish I could show you the entirety of his testimony, but it's reasonably short. He's an arresting officer who makes an arrest on Cleveland Avenue, and the arrest is essentially for a single rock of cocaine. Fortunately, we don't need to actually have his lengthy testimony read into the record because the defense counsel here sums it up very nicely. Let's watch.
After arresting Mr. Beebe and giving Mr. Ford a copy of charge, did that conclude your involvement?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
cross. Anyone?
Yes. Sorry, Judge, we'll go to the next time. Morning, sir.
Good morning.
Stansel, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's see. Your involvement in this case is that you come to the location, as you and other officers pass that location, you see folks run inside.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that was enough to make you all stop and go inside and pursue and see what was going on, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. You hadn't seen any crime being committed at that point, right?
No, sir.
Well, where is this location?
151 Cleveland Avenue.
Okay. How many of you guys, law enforcement officers patrolling at that time?
I can't answer that question. I'm not sure.
Okay. Roughly, how many car? More than one car?
In that area,
Well, right there at the scene. What we're talking about right now.
we were the only responding car there at the time.
Okay. All right. And so, see some guys run inside a store. You guys going inside. You rotation in there or just running?
Just walked in.
All right. You go back. You encounter these folks, and you make them come outside. Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anybody handcuffed or anything like that?
No, sir.
Okay. Y'all just talking to them at this point, right?
Yes, sir.
And at some point, if I understand correctly, you found what you believe to be a rock of crack cocaine, and Mr. Beebe was charged with that.
Yes, sir.
All right. And you remember the incident. You remember Mr. Beebe.
Yes, sir.
All right. You don't see him here, right? He's not in here.
Not to my knowledge, no, sir.
Okay. That's the only thing you charged him with, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. You didn't have any reason to, and you certainly did not believe there's anything to charge him with other than being in possession of a rock of crack cocaine, right?
I charged him accordingly based on the facts of the case. Yes, sir.
All right, according to the facts of the case.
Yes,
So
sir.
what you're testifying to is exactly what happened that day and everything that was involved on that day, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. You didn't charge him with a gang crime, did you?
No, sir.
No basis to it.
No, sir.
All right. That's all I have. Thank you, Judge.
Anybody?
And if you think about the masterful way that he did that, here is essentially what he's done. It's like, yeah, you got one guy for one rock of cocaine. He's not here in the courtroom, is he? No, because maybe he's not a part of this supposed gang. And perhaps even more importantly, you didn't charge him with a gang crime, you charged him with a drug crime. So they keep getting this message in, which is the cops were not looking at a gang. They were looking at individualized crimes. And essentially, I'm sure that they'll argue in closing that the RICO statute here is a creation of the defense of the district attorney in an attempt to put a shot across the bow of other similar rappers. So I think it was a really good day for the defense here because, they take 30 minutes to put a point up on the board and the defense attorneys come by and, with a couple of sniper shots, they take that out and take it right off the board. So hopefully you found this interesting. I find the trial tactics here very interesting. You've seen a lot of objections. The judge is overruling many of them because he has the discretion to do that. He has the discretion to overlook necessarily some evidentiary errors in order to ensure the flow of trial is not interrupted, in order to make sure that what they call the res gestae, or the rest of the story or the background, gets in. He's not allowed to just do that without any rationale, but essentially he keeps telling him, look, I'll give you a continuing objection, or I'll note your objection. The objections are more for the record and for the appeal, if there is one after this. But it's really the effect of the objections is to throw this young prosecutor off of her game. And it seems to be working pretty well. At any rate, that's what I have for you today. Today I went out and I spent $25 on Toys for Tots, and I donated them at my local Ollie's store. If you have an Ollie's in your town, they are collecting for Toys for Tots. So you can go in, buy a couple of toys, and never leave the store with them. They just throw it into the bin right there, and the Marine Corps will come and pick them up. So, again, great thing to do if you want to make somebody else's Christmas just a little bit merrier and maybe a little bit brighter. Thank you so much for watching. Be kind, be thoughtful, and be back here tomorrow at the beach, and we'll talk about something else, and might be more of this trial. It's actually been pretty interesting. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.